It's been a hot minute since I made a video on this game, or well, all in that matter, and why? Well, I've been working on this absolute behemoth of a 700 skin ranking video pretty much daily for all of November, which resulted in 0 uploads, and truthfully, while slightly working on a Die Death video, I haven't really thought to do much more with Forsaken. Well, I saw a ping for a Forsaken update on the 28th November, the Masquerade Surprise or whatever, and by the looks of the roster you could purchase in the event, this just looked like it would be an extremely high quality skin of some sorts. I had absolutely zero interest in playing this event. I went to play Peak instead. It was lots of fun. No! But then I saw the ping for the update to see a brand new killer named Nosferatu. I'm sorry, what? This was so jarring compared to the introduction of any other characters which had a trillion YouTube videos spoiling movesets beforehand. I was part of the problem. At the very least, I thought we'd see some sort of teaser for this, but no! This update was basically just a new killer plus a map, and there's a hell of a lot to discuss either way. And unfortunately, it isn't the most positive either. Not only is this killer the most jarring addition to Forsaken so far, but I think this entire update paints a larger picture of where this game is headed and its unfortunate loss of identity. I didn't expect to end up making a video like this, but after a lot of discussion I participated in about this update at all, I've wanted to compile my overall thoughts on the new killer and explain how this likely could lead to Forsaken's downfall. Quick disclaimer, this is absolutely not a video about the internal drama regarding the Forsaken team and some bad decisions from the higher-ups. I am tired of seeing drama everywhere. I think the way everything is being handled is terrible. I am not going to discuss it. The most you'll see out of me is this community post complaining about what I think is a justified point when it comes to morality in this whole mess. But yeah, this entire video is related to the game and the game only. Consider subscribing as I'm trying to hit 20,000 by the end of the year, and I hope you enjoy. This video is not about hate, it's not another Forsaken we need to talk, and definitely not leaning towards anything Twitter related. And there is some good in this controversial killer. This section is honestly pretty straightforward, as I basically just want to bullet point why Nosferatu isn't all that bad. Gotta give this video some sort of positivity anyways. Nosferatu is a vampire-like killer with my absolute favorite general design of a killer so far. I'll disregard how much it fits into the game, that's gonna go into the last section, but design-wise with its beautiful model and animations, I like Nosferatu a lot and I am very excited to see what his milestones and skins in general end up looking like. I personally think that Sixer's skins were a letdown, so maybe these can make it up. His chase theme and overall design plan is probably my favorite part about Nosferatu, who encapsulates a vampire perfectly, especially with his ability design and 2 unique status effects tied to him, namely Oblivious and Creatures. Secondly, Nos has a very interesting moveset with a ton of abilities that don't really make sense with one another, but what I do adore is Ascension. The devs playing around with verticality is my favorite new playstyle in the game, after Veronica and Sixer pulling it off too. Overall, I think the aesthetic and idea for this killer is great with his moveset design, animations, and chase theme, but that is genuinely all I got for praising this guy, for how I feel his effect and negativity on Forsaken much outweighs these positives. Hope you enjoyed my minute of gratitude, but wow, where do I start with Nosferatu here? This killer is just, oh my god, what were they thinking with some of the gimmicks he has? First off, I need to talk about how insane the price of 3,500 Sukars is. Seriously, that is more than every other skin combined in this event. Sukars aren't necessarily easy to get. You will average of 20 Sukars per survivor round, assuming you strive for them, and an average of roughly 36 per killer round. These stats assuming you have a full server and win every round. And with a general average of 10 rounds per hour, maybe 2 to 3 of them you get to be killer assuming you win and server wipe every possible time and spend all your Vokes on Sukars, it will take you roughly 30 hours of playtime, or in context of this event, 1 hour of purely grinding Sukars of Forsaken every single day of November. What were they thinking with this price? I was advocating for a price of maybe 1,000 Sukars. Even for the most complex killer we've seen so far, it's an insane task you must complete regarding how you need to finish the entire rest of the event before unlocking Nosferatu. Of course, there's bound to be a way to buy Sukars, which will put you down roughly 35 USD or 3,000 or so Robux. And it kinda irks me to say it, but this is what I think is Forsaken's first hint of pay to win. With such a beyond absurd price, you basically have to grind your heart out or spend a couple bucks. This reason applies only because Nosferatu is nothing less than the most overpowered killer we've ever gotten in Forsaken. His abilities are a giant bundle of gimmicks that deal too much damage and have too short of cooldowns. Nothing really sticks together to create a general strategy. This killer just feels like choosing a random ability of cooldown whenever it feels right to. This is a bit hard to explain, so I'll go over each ability separately to explain my thoughts better. Keep in mind, this part of the script is being written after the Nosferatu nerfs on December 2nd. Lacerate is his first ability, a pretty basic M1, not giving any status effects, just a pure 24 damage. This is actually the weakest M1 in the game in terms of total damage after status effects, but the 0.3 second windup making it borderline impossible to consistently react to his guess will make up for that, especially because Nos is just fast, just the tiniest bit slower than Jason and Cool Kid actually. Blood Hook is where the issues really begin though, a hook that you horizontally shoot towards the killer, which sounds familiar. This hook is weirdly inconsistent when it comes to aiming and tricking survivors into where you're sending it. It doesn't always feel anything like entanglement physics wise, and I always feel like aiming isn't following my speedy camera movements quick enough. If sent close up, the hook does a generally pathetic 18 damage, which is fine for getting the survivor close to you, but truthfully, not very effective when you could just back up a bit and activate the long range gimmick. Landing this hook will prompt both the killer and the survivor with a game of pressing keys in the correct order. I personally find this game insufferable with the WASD keys regarding this is the shape of the keys you have to press, not intentionally placed in a straight line setup like FNF does for a very good reason. This logic isn't fully applicable because they aren't arrows, but my point still mostly stands here, and when you're caught by a survivor, pressing the wrong key will result in you being pulled a bit closer to Nos for an actual punishing 35 damage. But the killer has no penalty for pressing the wrong key. You know what that means? It really sucks as a strategy. I think a tug-of-war back and forth sort of battle with correct and incorrect keys would have been a lot more interesting, but maybe that's just me. This is a weird ability with poor execution, and at least it's trying something unique with the minigame. It has similarities to Entanglement, which is kinda strange regarding the devs classify Nos as a zoner and ambusher, which I don't really see this fitting. Whatever, I can move on to the next ability. Cataclysm. Boy, I have a real love-hate relationship with this one. Its ideas are there with the teleportation backwards, the movement strategies it offers, and the trapping capabilities it offers, but truthfully, I can't like this ability because it genuinely feels like an awkward mashup of several existing dashing and trapping gimmicks possessed by other killers. I jokingly hinted at the idea a second ago about Blood Hook feeling like Entanglement, but we're 2 abilities in, not counting the M1, and this killer possesses a looser, less strategy-centralized version of Entanglement, Void Rush, and Corrupt Energy, but I'll wrap up this point around the rest of the abilities. Cataclysm is still a neat idea, but by far the most situational of Gnosis. It feels pretty much identical to Void Rush's physics, but without the satisfaction of successfully dashing into a survivor, because you're warped straight back to square one after a high chance the survivor just ran in the direction you weren't. The encirclement strategy is extremely hard to pull off due to generally the same issues as John Doe and his corrupt energy, though a successful cataclysm is genuinely satisfying for how much punishment is inflicted by survivors stepping onto these puddles. But seeing as I'm also acknowledging the survivor side of each ability, if the killer uses cataclysm right after you unknowingly back yourself into a corner you don't think twice about, it does not feel like your fault when Nos quickly surrounds you. The speed of the ability is way too fast to really form a strategy around dodging, except while running in the direction he missed, as I mentioned earlier. That works way too much of the time. Anyways, I think this is a poorly designed ability on both sides. It tried way too much and somehow has managed to feel unfair on both sides after each use. Oh, I forgot Hunter's Feast existed again when writing this script. This is Nos' 4th ability, to send a projectile to apply to any survivor. It'd be petty to compare this to Corrupt Nature or Nova or Infernal Cry, but it is kind of silly every killer seems to need a projectile. This ability just doesn't need to exist. It doesn't fit in with any other moves whatsoever. This memo is totally applicable to other killers too, but I have 2 responses to that. 1, this video is to critique Nos in specific, and 2, at least those killers weren't the 7th one added to the game and we're still seeing repeat moves. Lastly, the 5th and final ability is Ascension. I briefly brought this one up earlier because the achievement of literal flight in Forsaken and being able to watch over the full map is just so cool. It's a much more interesting way to get a detection of all the survivors. But also, there's a reason the other killers have a simpler solution to detecting survivors just being a button click. Flight in this game is absolutely insane, especially for being tied to an extremely high damage dealing ability that requires constant attention to see the tiny little bat in the sky, especially considering the bat is frustratingly hard to see on some maps. But they at least colored the underbelly in neon red, so good choice I suppose. Anyways, it's maybe at the tiniest bit of a stretch to compare this to Demonic Pursuit, but I'm comparing it to Demonic Pursuit. This ability is basically launching yourself in the air to jump scare and crash down onto a survivor, both with severe punishment. I think I made my point clear on this killer just by reviewing the moveset alone, so I'll suppose I'll move on. Nos' moveset basically dumbs down to a set of rip-off abilities with inflated damage. What happened to killers having a playstyle? On the simpler side, 1x is meant to utilize projectiles, John Doe could trap, and Slasher could target. Cool Kid is a rough combination for an all-around experience, notably being the most controversial of the original four, which I agree with. For the complex side, Noli is meant to utilize hallucination, ambushing, and trickery, and Sixer has, well, blood hunt and surrounds his whole strategy around snowballing and whittling people down. Nos doesn't introduce a new strategy, doesn't balance a combination if he were trying to be a Cool Kid mixed bag, it is absolutely overpowered. His moveset is a mix of 1x, Noli, John Doe, and Sixer all combined with inflated damage levels. No abilities sync with one another, so instead of developing a strategy when playing him, you default to what feels right off the way too short cooldowns. Not to mention, as I hinted earlier, this killer just feels both overpowered and easy to win while feeling unsatisfying at the same time. How do you achieve both of those? I don't really get where this zoner slash ambusher playstyle comes from for this reason. Well, this is ambushing and this is zoning, I guess. Each ability doesn't sync with each other nor anything else, so I genuinely don't think it's valid whatsoever. I would just classify this killer as basically having a lack of strategy, and just because there isn't a designated lack of strategy doesn't mean to make everything do hella damage. Forsaken killer strategies should be surrounded by succeeding in your intended playstyle and getting mass survivor damage for pulling this off with several abilities, not reused code and insane stats to make up for a lack of strategy. I haven't even brought up the bugs of some of these abilities, nor do I want to, so I guess I'll just play the clips, though the second one is pretty funny while frustrating.
Go.
What the fuck?
What was that?
You ruined it. New tech. New tech.
New take?
Alright, the video is completely shifting gears here, so be aware. Forsaken's identity as a game isn't something I've really talked about before, but noticing just how far we've come and how offset it feels compared to the first couple months are actually worth talking about. Forsaken was released as a game with 12 characters, all based on old Roblox figures, myths, and connections with lore. The furthest they would stretch from this memo was with characters like Taff, Two Time, and Chance being original characters but greatly expired from Roblox accessories or concepts such as Subspace, Spawn, and I think Fedoras respectively. The killers would all follow this suit too, along with the maps being spin-offs of popular old Roblox sanctuaries, or some other being made-up locations but greatly inspired from the retro building styles and in-game characters, like Cool Carnival. The entire game had a clear, dedicated style to appeal to a lot of people, a retro-inspired Roblox strategy and survival-toned game. There were also many opportunities of interesting lore regarding how characters ended up in Forsaken. Forsaken is what I like to call a style or an identity. And I feel like this identity has been slowly deteriorating over the past few years, and this update has officially just thrown one of the key aspects of the game uniqueness out the window. Now, in my opinion, this deterioration began with skins of all things. So how does that connect? Many skins then and now are collaborations with other Roblox games or references to many classic Roblox styles, characters, people, the list goes on. Skins aren't canonical to Forsaken's lore, but they do put an imprint on the style as more than the majority of players use them. Most skins back in the day were, well, pretty lazy and simple, had a lack of details. Of course there were exceptions to this, but in general that was because skins didn't matter. In a game that were to be dedicated to a style, it would be harder to make the main content of the update stick to the game style. But obviously, adding a few skins and more collaborations could never hurt, as well as them technically not being canonical, so more skins were added. And more. And more, and more. You'll begin to notice a pretty dramatic shift in how skins were treated in this game, going from the sideshow of the updates to sometimes the main show. We saw 50 new skins in the 2-time update, 90 in the Noli update, 77 in the Slasher update, and a whopping 120 in the Sixer update. And as time went on, there was a clear up in quality and modeling regarding the skin design themselves, and it was a bit jarring at times seeing these hyper-detailed characters playing on a field of intentionally low-quality building styles and studs. But these are just skins, it doesn't exactly matter, and that's why you've probably never heard anyone bring this up before. As you'll see in my skin ranking, I loved those detailed skins simply because they just look good. They're impressively modeled and have great color choice. I love the skins in this game, the devs are spectacular at them, and while yes, you could argue they don't fit the style, they are just non-canonical designs and especially don't affect the gameplay. It still feels like Forsaken. But unfortunately, I fell especially upon this recent update. Forsaken's identity has really crumbled and I've never felt so almost irritated playing this game for what it's become. Yes, I'm regarding not just Nosferatu, but the new map, Bloodfill Manor. because we've moved so far away from skins now. These two new aspects are directly clashing with Forsaken's core style. All characters in Forsaken are either intertwined with lore, a popular figure or person of especially classic Roblox, or an originally designed character based on a classic Roblox concept, as I mentioned earlier. On the other hand, Nosferatu is based on an unpopular Roblox vampire package mixed together with inspiration from a Hollow Knight character. What? This is such a jarring stray from what we know Forsaken of. Regarding his moveset, this one is even more jarring. This feels like a wacky Forsaken fan game with the most insane moveset known to mankind that you'd scoff at thinking this could come to the main game. It reminds me of like Slender Man from fake Forsaken where you could go invisible every 5 seconds. I think they already went pretty haywire with Sixer and his gigantic leap across the map, but this is just too much. Seriously, just some comparisons to what this game looked like half a year ago to now, whether it's design or gameplay wise. What happened to the characters? Not skins, but characters themselves having intentionally poor textures to feel like classic Roblox instead of being as detailed as possible. It sorta irks me to be right in the meat of a really slow and painful identity loss over the course of 11 months, and I know issues like this don't ruin the game, but it really saddens me of what we lost. And probably the best example of Forsaken's transition is Bloodfilm Manor. This is the newest map in Forsaken released with Nosferatu, and one of the only maps with original ideas by the developers themselves, and that by concept is fine, just look at Cool Carnival. They didn't even try to stick to the style. This map is absolutely beautiful and I hate it. Whoever created it deserves all the praise in the world for their building skills, but you are working for the wrong game. Never in a million years would I guess a detailed map without a stud in sight would be added to Forsaken. Do they not care anymore? Skins were one thing, character origin designs were another, but what are we even doing anymore? I hate to say it, but Forsaken has really lost its identity over the year, from a simple classical Roblox style to a careless clashing of themes. It really has become an anything goes mindset, and I find that pretty saddening. I feel like losing grasp of what makes your game unique is a factor of what leads to downfalls, and that's why I wanted to discuss this today. But that's the end of the video. Sorry I haven't uploaded in like 5 weeks, but I do have pretty big plans coming up, so look out for that, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.